Story 1. My brother skipped his own wedding reception. My brother got married yesterday, but he and his wife skipped their own reception. No one even knew they were going to do it except for one of their friends, so it was a complete surprise and really embarrassing, to be honest. At first, no one knew. They decided to get married locally, which was nice, because I'm sure most of you would agree that having to travel somewhere else for a wedding is a pain. This is what was supposed to happen. After the wedding, my brother and his wife were supposed to be introduced to everyone in the reception hall. The guests would chat and drink for an hour before the food was served. During that time, all the photos would be taken. After that hour was up and the photos were done, the food would get served and the reception would start. What actually happened? Their friend who was supposed to introduce them instead told everyone that my brother and his wife had left for their honeymoon and thanked everyone for attending, and then the food started getting served right away. The photographer had been sent home. Apparently, my brother and his wife did their photos before the ceremony and took some with the few people who did know they were skipping the reception. Some of their friends and his wife's dad and his wife, but no one else, including anyone from my family. Obviously, we were embarrassed. My parents were angry and they talked to the friend because my brother and his wife weren't answering. Their honeymoon was supposed to be in a few months. Apparently, they canceled it 2 weeks ago and switched to a different honeymoon. They were already on their way to Bristol to the airport and had left their mobile phones with their friend. He had them when my parents talked to him. Apparently, the whole reason for this is that my other brother's girlfriend is pregnant and they were going to announce it and that they want to get married at the reception. Only my parents had known. I didn't even know. I don't know how my brother, who was getting married, found out. Someone I don't know told my aunt and uncle about it, and they started spreading it around to the other guests, which upset my parents and my brother and his girlfriend. I know my brother and his wife don't want to be parents themselves, but this seems extreme over a pregnancy. Further, I don't understand why they would skip something that they paid for, like this. What I want to get off my chest is that we are embarrassed, especially my parents, and lots of people are upset, especially my brother and his girlfriend. There was lots of drama for nothing. It's only been one day, but the fallout is bigger. I don't understand why my brother and his wife would do all this. I honestly don't. That's all. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. Story 2. Am I the asshole? For making my brother's wedding reception about me, I 25. Female, I'm a bridesmaid to the fiancé, 30. Female of my older brother, 31 male. She and I aren't particularly close, but I don't dislike her, and I suspect she asked me just because I'm my brother's sister. I, of course, agreed, and I was even fine with her putting me in whatever style she wanted, so long as it didn't involve me cutting, dyeing my hair, any major changes. It's not my day. I can suck up an ugly dress and act like it's gorgeous if that makes her happy. The issue, however, is that I'm a wheelchair user. I know that the wedding venue is fine for me, as it's our local church, totally accessible. So all is well. It's the venue being used for the reception that worries me. I asked her where the reception was going to be and if it was accessible for me and had an accessible bathroom, just covering my bases. She didn't get back to me. I figured she was busy, so left it a week or so before chasing her up again to re-ask. She told me she wasn't sure, so I asked where it was, and she told me. I ended up looking up the building and my heart sank. It is an old building, not accessible at all for me, and no bathrooms I could feasibly use either. I told her this, and she got very upset, saying my brother had told her that he'd cover the cost, and she should just pick whatever she loved, and that she loved this. She then went on to suggest that we could just have someone carry me into the building, and my family or the other bridesmaids could help me use the bathroom when needed, which the very idea mortified me. I'm not about to agree to being carried in and needing help to go to the bathroom. I ended up giving her two options if she wanted me at the reception. She needed to pick somewhere that was accessible. If she didn't pick somewhere accessible, then I'd of course still be her bridesmaid at the wedding, but I'd have to skip the reception. She got upset at this as she feels like everyone, especially my family, will notice my absence and question it, and it'll make her look bad. She then told me I was making this about me, which wasn't fair. When it was her day, I won't lie at this point, I was enraged. I wanted to tell my brother to let him sort this, but I wasn't about to start shit between them over this. And I pointed out to her that, yes, this was her day, and I had no intention of making about me. However, by marrying my brother, she was joining our family, and she needed to realize that she was not as sensitive as she thought she was. And suggesting that I be carried into the building and aided going to the bathroom was downright insulting. This led to a larger fight, and she told me if my brother didn't already know I was her bridesmaid, that she'd not want me to be it anymore. I called it quits at that point and told her she had my two options, and it was up to her which she wanted. Am I the asshole here? I don't feel like asking for the minimum accessibility is a lot, but maybe I'm too upset by the situation. And her suggestions to see it clearly. Update. Hi everyone. Here's an update to the situation. As many of you suggested, I checked in with my brother and told him what was going on. And I found out that the reason he'd left the reception to her was they'd made an agreement with him covering the ceremony. family, and she'd cover the reception. We're Catholic, so he cared more about the religious side of the event, while she cared more about the reception party as she's not religious, which isn't a bad thing, just different. I showed him the texts and explained what had happened. He was pissed off at her suggestion I be carried into the building and assisted in going to the bathroom, and after only a quick search of the venue she'd picked, he could also see it wouldn't work out for me, and promised he'd resolve this and have a talk with her. He was annoyed at me for not bringing this to his attention sooner, and told me I shouldn't worry about his feelings over this. The best part of all of this, the venue isn't even booked yet. He had assumed she'd pick out somewhere accessible, but has admitted that he should have ensured that and not thought it a given, so he has told me he'll see. It's changed, and if it isn't, they have a bigger problem on their hands. The part that really got to him, though, was the admission that she didn't want me as her bridesmaid if he didn't already know, and he told me in that case he didn't want me being her bridesmaid, and instead wanted me to be his groomswoman, which I agreed to. I've yet to hear back from him on what's happening, so I can only wait and see. I'll update further when I know more. Story 3, brother no-showed his own wedding. So my brother 38 has always been an asshole, but this is next level even for him. He's a drinker that has had long stretches of sobriety before falling off the wagon pretty hard. He's been drinking again recently, but during his stag do a couple of weeks back, he was completely well-behaved. He was drinking most of the day, was perfectly pleasant and responsible to everybody, and went to bed with no issues. Now, on top of all that, he's never been completely trustworthy, always doing the minimum amount of work he can to get by, and often hooks up with the kind of women that are lonely and willing to do everything for him. For the last several years, he's been with a very kind lady who still fits that description. This girl can do it all: painting, decorating, plumbing, fixing cars, anything she sets her mind to. Absolutely the opposite of my brother. She asked him to get married, and after he said yes, she went to work, putting months of time and effort into planning and buying everything to make it perfect, including his own suit, shoes, and she was working overtime to make this happen. The night before the wedding, she was up late decorating the venue, whilst he was at the pub, having a few beers with the father of the bride and his best man. Around 12 a.m., those guys decided enough was enough, and it was time for bed. My brother wanted to head into town, and the guys were telling him not to be so stupid and escorted him to his hotel room. Cut to around 8 a.m. The next morning, my sister's doing the bride's hair and makeup. My mother and auntie are dressing up the young bridesmaids, and everybody there is as happy as you could imagine. Meanwhile, the father of the bride and the best man are unable to contact my brother, and after gaining access to his room, realize he's not there, and the bed was clearly not slept in. They start frantically trying to call and go out looking. Service is at 12:30 p.m. He finally answers at around 10:30, telling the best man to calm down. He's coming back soon. There's music and laughter in the background, and he's clearly at some kind of party. He then hangs up and turns his phone off. An hour later, there's still no sign, and the guys make the decision to head to the ladies' hotel next door and tell them what's happened. I'm sure you can imagine the scene, as such a happy morning turns to one of complete devastation, with the father and mother of the bride bawling into each other's arms, the bride hysterical, being consoled by my sister and bridesmaids, my mother, auntie, and the best man watching all of this and feeling heartbroken and also complete embarrassment. It got to 12:15, with the bride holding out hope for those final few seconds before realizing it was over, and they had to cancel, and that was that. The next time my brother was seen was randomly by a wedding reception guest that turned up at the wrong hotel about 3:30 p.m. He was drinking in a bar over the road on his own, and when asked what the hell he was doing, just played it off with meh. What's all the fuss about? No big deal. We can do it anytime. ECE. The guest left him to it, and we all met at the reception. The bride had decided to go ahead as a thank you to those who'd made the effort to travel to be there. Take days off, ECT, but I'm sure you can imagine how it all went down, with people randomly breaking into tears or getting angry throughout the night. Now it's the next morning, and the bride and her family travel home. My brother's outside the house complaining about being cold and to be let in. However, when he sees the faces of the bride, her father, and her brothers, he swiftly turns on the waterworks and starts apologizing to them all, and how he didn't mean it. He basically got chased out of the street. His bags were packed and thrown out on two. The lawn, his designer clothes and shoes that she has paid for over the years were sold on Facebook Marketplace that afternoon. He has no phone as he lost it at some point. His bank account is empty as he spent everything on that one drinking session, and he has nowhere to go. None of us would take him in, and my mother's going to stay with her for a few weeks to take care of everything. That's the story. And now we're living with the aftermath. The news is all over Facebook, and everyone is feeling heartbroken and humiliated. My mother has always been a wonderful, kind hearted lady, but has never been able to have a happy life. Since she left my abusive father and his suicide, she's been dealing with my brother's issues ever since. I think she thought she'd finally got him over the finish line with this wedding, and now that hope has turned to dust, my thoughts are with her and his lovely would be wife. But I have a deep level of anxiety and dread over what happens now with my brother. He doesn't deserve to be allowed back into her life, and obviously her family utterly despise him at this point. Along with most of my family, his friends and best man, I hear a neighbor has put him up in a hotel outside of town for a few days. Always a bleeding heart for him to turn to clear his head. However, with no family phone, home, it's in her name. Car, it's in her name. Or money, I just can't see where he goes from here. At almost 40, the days of him using his boyish good looks and charm to worm his way back in or elsewhere are pretty much done. And the big fear is he goes down the same path his dad did. The bride, my mother's sister, and now possibly her mother in his place along with the kids, are about to fly out on the honeymoon for 10 days, which I couldn't be happier about. That will really help them. My brother, however, is now on his own, penniless, alone with his thoughts, until he has to check out on Monday morning. I have an overwhelming sense of anxiety and despair. Cliff's brother's a dick.